Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Social Antipasti podcast show. Today, I'm very happy to have a special guest from UK. So let's start. Hi, everybody, and welcome to this podcast episode. Today, I'm thrilled to be hosting a UK professional. Her name is Danielle Sheerin. Welcome, Danielle. How are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you, Paolo.
So, the first question that I usually ask with my guests is to tell us about yourself. So, who is Danielle Sheerin and what you do?
It's my favourite subject.
Great.
I'm co-founder and consultant at Bright Cultures, and we're a social media customer engagement consultancy based in the UK.
Right.
So Bright Cultures is myself, my business partner Kaz, who's on holiday, and we specialise in helping large organisations set up and develop sort of best-in-class social media customer service and engagement. We've got about 15 years of experience between us in social media consultancy, and we've worked with some really large organisations in the UK, people like Barclays, RBS, MBNA, Direct Line, O2.
Oh, really, yes. I've been working for Direct Line in Italy for 15 years.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we've got that in common.
Right.
We basically help them create the right structures and processes so they can actually start to deliver best-in-class social customer service. From a personal point of view, I'm a bit nerdy. I like designing systems that work well. So that really motivates me. But I think the main thing that drives Kaz and I in Bright Cultures is about sort of creating better things for customers. I really, really hate bad customer service as a consumer. It drives me crazy when I get bad service. And so, if I can help an organisation take a step back, start to think about its customers differently and treat them better, then I'm a happy woman. So, that's us.
Well, I'm curious to know, after listening to your great introduction, how did you fall in love with customer service?
I think I started off with an interest in banking and financial services because banks and financial services, certainly in the UK and I think probably sort of globally, really lost the trust of the consumer, and they weren't treating consumers very well. I mean, we had all the banking scandals, obviously, and I think when I had the opportunity to work with Barclaycard and create something that was actually, tangibly good for customers, I just fell in love with it, really. And plus the type of work, like I said, I'm a bit nerdy. The type of work suits me. I like sitting down and unpicking how things work and putting them back together in new ways and getting them to work better. And that was it, really. Just that combination of just really interesting work in an industry that particularly needed it was just really, really compelling. And since then I just the more projects I've done, the more I've enjoyed it. And seeing clients happy is great. Seeing customers happy is great. And the other thing I think I really, really love is when you've worked with a customer and you've helped them set up a social customer service team, and those agents are engaging with customers on a personal level, making their lives better, helping them, they get a lot out of it. Those agents are really happy, they're really excited, they're really enjoying their job, and that's just such a buzz. I know when I'm training a group of social customer service agents that they are going to love it. And that's just fantastic. It's just so much fun to train somebody up in something they're going to get so much out of. So,
great.
Love it.
Well, your words are I feel from your words that you're very enthusiastic about your job, and that's great. That's absolutely lovely. Imagine you're talking to somebody who doesn't know anything about social customer service. I mean, how would you define it in a very simple and brief way?
So I suppose in its simplest sense, social customer service is where organisations offer their customer support on social media channels. So usually that'll be Twitter, but it can also be Facebook, YouTube, or any other of the myriad of social networks that are out there. So what happens is, say, for example, a customer tweets a brand with a complaint. That brand would see that tweet and they would respond to the customer in Twitter and help them get a resolution. So that, in its most simple terms, is what social customer service is.
Yeah.
But I both know it's a lot more complex than that in reality. So for a start, a lot of brands, big and small actually, are quite reluctant to start engaging with customers around issues and problems, in that public.
Oh, yes.
It's scared.
Yes.
They don't want to admit that there's anything negative associated with their brand, even though it's there for everyone to see. They don't want to acknowledge that negativity exists.
Yeah.
They're worried that they might say the wrong thing or that it will flare up. So, although it's very simple, there's a lot you have to do in the background. You need good processes, you need good governance, you need good escalation procedures, before you can even start engaging.
Yes.
Also, social media, because it's so public and because it's so egalitarian, it requires a really different set of skills from agents than you'd see in traditional servicing.
Totally agree with you, Danielle. In fact, one of the problems that also brands in Italy face is that they do really need to switch their culture, their customer service culture, even before using new social tools. In fact, those agents that used to help people via traditional channels need specific training to get those necessary skills to handle in a public environment.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously you've got to have the digital skills. You've got to know how to use the tools, but that's what you can teach. But in terms of one of the things I think people underestimate most was tone of voice. That's so crucial. Mm-hmm. And a lot of agents, in traditional call centres are almost sort of taught by script. You can't do that on social media. You have to be very human, and you have to have a whole lot of softer skills around things like empathy. You have to have good judgment to know how you should respond, when you should respond, and you need to be able to take ownership of an issue and actually sort of see it through to resolution. So for a lot of agents, that's quite a serious amount of upskilling, and you different set of qualities than you might expect. And that also leads to another point that, although, again, it's very simple to say, well, somebody tweets and the brand responds and resolves it. But actually what that means is you have to make sure that customers can get that resolution in that channel. So, there's no point in someone tweeting you and you pass them off to a telephone number. They've probably already tried that. That's going to, it's going to deflect that customer to your highest cost servicing solution. And also, secondly, you're going to frustrate the customer. So, you've got a whole new set of workflows and a whole new set of tools that support those workflows that need to be embedded internally to allow your agents to actually provide that end-to-end resolution before you can actually start that sort of engagement process. So it sounds simple, but it's actually a very, very complex task. And what I find with clients is it's bespoke model for each different business. No businesses, two businesses are the same in terms of the back-end processes that let them deal with social customer service.
Right. So we can say that it's very simple to send a tweet on the customer side, but it's very complex to handle all the procedures and workflows that are necessary to handle, choose priority, and answer with the right tone of voice in a very timely manner and solving customer issues.
And of course the big trick is making it look simple to the customer.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You don't want it to look incredibly complex to the customer. You want it to look like, yes, we're here, we're listening, let's sort that out for you. So
yeah, that's a great trick, because what the customer sees is only the tweet back. So
yeah, it should be quick, it should be smooth and
clear,
human and clear. Yeah,
human and clear.
A lot goes into that.
yeah. So I think that we really ready to face the third question that I have for you, Danielle. Do you think that social customer service is important for any kind of business? And if so, why?
I think you can probably guess my response to this one, but yeah, I do. I really think
No, I didn't guess so because you mentioned that you're working especially with large organization.
yeah.
So I didn't assume that.
I think it's essential, and the reason I think it's essential is because it's where the customers are. So back when Barclaycard originally contacted us to help them create a customer service solution back in 2010, that was because their comms team had noticed that customers were talking about them on social media, and they thought, well, if people are talking about us and they've got questions, we ought to be able to respond. And if we can't, then we can't protect ourselves, we can't help people. That was 5 years ago. So if that was happening 5 years ago, imagine how much conversation about brands happens on social now. And I was talking to a large UK company just last week, actually, and they told me they get upwards of over 100,000 mentions of their brand a month on social media.
Wow.
So if that's where your customers are, and they're there and they're asking for information, or they need help, or they're complaining about you, then you need to be responding. It's really public at social media. If you're ignoring your customers, other people can see that you're ignoring them. So it's not leaving a really good impression of your brand, and potentially also you're going to risk, significant reputational damage if something escalates and becomes a crisis. So, yeah, I think it's really essential for brands to be offering social customer service. But I also think that if they're going to offer social customer service, they need to take it seriously. I think, if you do it badly, it's going to be equally damaging for your brand than if you don't offer it at all. So I think, yes, businesses need to be doing it, but they need to be doing it well. So,
doing well. When I talk to brands and tell them that they need to do it well, I mean that they need to invest time and money. So brands need to be willing to be investing time and money.
I think the thing is, though, if they don't invest the time and money, then they're wasting an opportunity to save time and money. Because social customer service done well, it's the cheapest route for servicing. If you can deflect calls from your call centre, you're going to save money. You're going to improve your reputation. You're going to help build up your brand equity. So that investment is exactly, it's an investment. So it doesn't make sense to me when it's sort of sidelined or just handled in a very ad hoc way. I don't see the point. It's a huge opportunity for brands.
Yeah, totally agree with you. In fact, it's not a cost; it's just an investment for your future. I read an interesting article a few days ago about HP Hewlett-Packard. The global social care director was interviewed by Salesforce, and she explained in a very interesting way how did they start in 2008 to be aware, to listen, to do some social listening, because they realized that regardless they were online or not, people used to talk about the brand. And then in 2009 they introduced their first online forum within their website. Then they added several corporate blogs. And now they also deal with customers using Twitter and Facebook in a very efficient way. In fact, they got great results in terms of reducing costs and improve efficiency, handling many conversations than they used to do in earlier, only with traditional channels. So that's how big brands, for instance, were able to improve efficiency and reduce costs via social customer service.
Yeah, I think any brand that sort of needs to make a business case, that's where you start. Because it really does. If you think about if you're a big brand, say a big telecoms company or something, and you have an outage, if you've got social customer service, you can let people know. You're not going to be waiting for them to call up your call centre and block the lines. You can actually proactively reach out with information and manage that situation. And it's just such a huge opportunity. So,
right, yeah. Talking about great events, we met each other at Social Customer Service Summit in London. Yes, last year. this year, a few months ago, and I want to take this opportunity to know about your experience about that event. What did you appreciate the most during that event? What did you like the most?
It's quite nice to actually think back on that event. I think thinking about it, there were two things I really loved about the event. The first one was it was really nice to have an event that was dedicated to social customer service.
Yes.
Quite often, it gets subsumed into social media marketing or call center or just general customer experience sort of conferences. So I really like the fact that this event was taking it seriously and allowing us to have that space to explore what best practice looks like in this particular arena, because it's a really fast growing area, but it's not always very much talked about. It is between you and I, obviously, but it's lovely to have the space to explore what the future looked like and what good looks like and what people's experiences were. I think the other thing I really liked about it was the fact that there was a lot of industry people there sharing brand stories and case studies. It wasn't just consultants talking.
Many different industries.
It's really interesting to see what people have done and what successes they've had and get some case studies from them. It felt really practical and it felt like the spirit of peer-to-peer advice and exploration and insight. And that was really refreshing. I thought, I, as an event, I'd definitely recommend it, and I'd definitely go again in the future. So, if any listeners are thinking about it next year, go along. It's good.
Great. So, a message for you listeners: go next year to Social Customer Service Summit. It's worth it.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's good. Great. Another question for you: how brands can deliver a great customer experience, combining self-service options and personalization?
Mm-hmm. So, I love self-service.
Me too.
but with a caveat.
Yeah.
I think the key to self-service and personalisation is that you have to understand where it adds value to the customer. So, to my mind, self-service is great, but only in situations where it actually makes the customer's life easier, not the business's life easier. I see a lot of organisations that offer self-service options because it saves them money, or it gets, it's a process that they actually don't want to have to deal with. And actually it's not necessarily the greatest solution for the customer. So what I tend to do with my clients is get them to take a really close look at what the customer pain points are, and then try and work out how self-serve, personalisation, or any other sort of value-add services can actually start to remove those pain points, or at least remove that friction around getting them resolved, if you know what I mean.
All right.
I think if you do it right, it's fantastic because it's a win-win. Self-serve can reduce your costs as a business, but it can allow you to sort of deflect volumes from the call centre and so on, and it also makes life easier for the customer. But I think the risk for some businesses with self-serve is that they think it can replace the human interaction, the agent, the social customer service agent. But to me, those agents are still essential. There's not going to be every case where self-serve is going to work. If you've got a complex or a personal issue, on the whole, as a customer, you're going to want personal support. So I think the example I always use is around self-service is hotels. I think hotels have understood this model for quite a while.
Yes.
So if you look at like a really high-end hotel, quite often those have been brands that have been really innovative in creating tools and apps and things that help their customers self-serve. Yeah. So you can get now that if you're in the bar or something, you can change the room temperature on your mobile phone, which is brilliant idea. You can order sort out your dry cleaning from an app and all sorts of things. Really useful stuff, but they still have that concierge desk downstairs. They haven't taken away the concierge because they know that sometimes you just need to speak to a human being,
especially when you get for the first time at your hotel.
Yes, exactly. Sometimes you need a human being to tell you something that's an opinion, or to sort out a problem that you can't get resolution for any other way, or you might have a personal issue. You need to maintain that level of human interaction, and really, I think I use a sort of a pyramid model with sort of self-service lower down. You can deal with higher volumes in self-service at a cheaper cost, and that's great. But what it should do then is free up your social customer service agents to deal with those really concierge-style problems. Actually get it so that everything's working in harmony for the customer. Self-serve where they need it, human touch where they need that. That's the ideal model, I think.
Great. I love that model. Really appreciate. In fact, self-service can be a very useful way to help customers online, but customers need to get those information very quickly, and they don't want to surf on 3 or 4 pages. And at the same time, self-service cannot replace any kind of human interaction.
Yeah.
So as call center did not replace traditional channels in the 90s when I started my fantastic startup with Direct Line Italy, nowadays social media cannot replace other traditional customer service channel. So the good mix is that there is no one size fit all, as you said. That's why advising brands like you, like professionals like you are doing, is to help where are their needs, and then afterwards decide which tools to use and where.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, and looking at it from the customer's point of view, not the business's point of view.
Yeah, that's essential. That's
really
crucial. Absolutely, Danielle. Well, I read an interesting article written by you, and the title was "A New Model for Crisis Assessment." In that article, you explained how to detect crisis from simple issues. What are the main risks for brands deriving from online complaints or just attacks by trolls?
So,
Ta-da!
lots of brands, they're really aware that social media comes with risks, and it scares them. But I think for a lot of organisations, that fear is quite unfocused. They know the risk is there, but they're not sure exactly what the risk is, and they're not sure how to handle it. And there's loads and loads of real nasty scare stories about social media crises and mistakes and things that have gone viral. So,
yes,
brands are nervous, and so what are the risks? Well, broadly speaking, the risks are, firstly, you say something wrong. Secondly, you do something wrong. And thirdly, somebody does something wrong to you. That's really all that can happen. But, of course, it doesn't end there. Yeah. The real risk on social is the fact that it's public, that it's big, and that things can travel fast. So actually the real risk is what happens next. How does your community react to the thing that has happened? Right. So the model of crisis assessment that you're talking about, which is on my website, so if anyone wants to have a look at it, they can go and find it there. It came about because a client of mine recognised that the risk in social media is about how your community react to things. And he wanted to work out, how the community might react to an issue, and then also what impact this reaction might have on his brand. And his idea was that if we could understand that, then he would have a way of prioritising issues and also then working out how to manage the response to them. Mm-hmm. So the model I came up with, it looks at 3 factors of a crisis in social media. Firstly, the reach, which is sort of like how far has something gone? How many people are talking to it about it? How influential are those people? The second factor is impact, which is about how seriously it's affecting people, or how many people are actually affected by it, or how long is it going to go on? So, how serious is the issue we're talking about? And the third factor, which I think it was almost like a revelation that realised that reach is important and impact is important, but there's a third factor at play that really steers how a crisis can develop and how you can respond to it. And I called that third factor depth. And what depth is a reflection on how much at fault the organisation is. So have they been the victim of something, or is it something that they've done something wrong, or they should have prevented it? So I think that's something really interesting. The model sort of suggests that if you've only got one of those factors present, it's probably only going to be a relatively minor PR issue. So for example, if something has happened and lots of people are talking about it, but not many people are affected, and your business hasn't done anything wrong, then it's probably something your PR team can mop up really easily.
Yes.
But if you've got a lot of people affected and it's the organisation's fault and an influencer has picked up on it, then you've got the makings of a crisis, and your PR team better be on board, and you better start managing it pretty quickly.
Right.
So that model's out there. So far it seems to be quite useful, and the company that it was originally built for are using it, and I've got a couple of other companies using it as well. Really would like, anyone else that wants to pick it up and try it out and give me feedback, that would be really useful. I'd like to evolve it further. But also, I think with social media risks, it's a lot better if those issues don't arise in the first place. So, you've got to really also put stuff in place to make sure that you don't say something wrong in the first place. So you need governance and training. You've got to make sure you don't do the wrong thing, that's going to get out there. You've got to have sort of business practices that are fit for purpose and, actually look after your customers. And you've got to have the right sort of back-end systems in place so that, if you're, you're protected from hackers, fraud, all those sorts of things. You've got to try and make sure that the things that trigger a crisis don't happen to your brand first and foremost. And I think also, spotting a crisis and responding to it is one thing, but you also need proper crisis management training, particularly on social media, so that, should the worst happen, yes, you can recognise it and you can assess it and spot it, but you also need to know how to manage it and and sort of throw everything you can at it to make sure that the fire is dampened down effectively. So, yeah.
Well, I have another question listening to your interesting answer. So if a crisis is starting right now in this company, let's imagine that we're working in different departments of the same company, and you are the customer service team or social customer service, but the issue regards another department, which is mine, and you don't have the skills, the necessary skills to answer. So you need my intervention to get the proper information to deliver to the customers. How would you organize that kind of workflow?
And you need to have a really, really robust escalation process. Firstly, a triage process to sort of spot and identify and understand that issue is arising, and then really clear sort of processes that say, if this happens, this is the team or the person that needs to be contacted. Ideally, you need some internal systems that allow you to do that very immediately. So some sort of internal chat or tool that allows you to sort of bring that person into your workflow. There are plenty of tools out there that do that.
Yes.
And it's going to bring me on to a point I'm going to make in a bit, but you also need some really strong internal SLAs, because there is no point in you having a great customer SLA externally, but if you pass, escalate something internally, it takes that person 2 days to get a signed off media friendly response. Social media doesn't work like that. So, your comms team, which presumably in most cases who you'd pass off to for a PR issue, they're going to need to know sort of suitability for social media responses. They're going to need to know how quickly to get back to you and make sure it's pretty fast. And then you need the processes also then to sort of help continue to monitor the issue, to actually make sure that it's being handled on an ongoing basis as the issue sort of breaks and changes, and more people start talking about it. So it's really about setting up those internal connections and working practices and sort of it all documented so that everybody knows what their responsibilities are and everyone can pull together in a crisis to make sure the response is efficient and effective.
Yeah, right. Thank you for your answer, Danielle.
And
sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you, of course.
No. and it just occurred to me. And the other thing as well is to practice it. So I'm a real firm believer that for crises, you should practice with crisis simulations, and you should get your social customer service team and you get your comms team working together in a simulated crisis environment, so you can try those communication networks. You know where the gaps are, then you know what works and what doesn't, and then if the worst comes to the worst, you can deal with it. And I've run. I did a big crisis simulation with a telecoms company in the UK, and they had a major crisis about 3 weeks afterwards. And they handled it beautifully. And actually, people were talking about how well they handled it. So, practice is everything. Get the systems and the processes and, the communication networks in place, and then try it out. And then you're ready when a crisis does happen. It takes away a lot of the fear, and confidence in handling a crisis is essential.
Right. So we said so many things so far this interview, but the next question, I think, is crucial because we need to convince those brands who are still reluctant to adopt social channels. So I'm asking you why and how brands should embrace social channels and integrate them within their traditional customer service. Are there any kind of step that you would suggest to follow?
That's a big question. I think that yes, there are. I sat down and thought about this, and there's sort of 8 main steps, I think. But obviously, there's quite a lot of sub steps, if you like, in each one. So, I think the first thing is knowing what you want to achieve. So, firstly, the first step: define your social customer service vision and goals. So, that's your strategy. You wouldn't do any other business activity without a strategy. You need a strategy to guide your activity. So get that first. What are you trying to achieve with this? What do you want to do? How do you want to be for your customers? Then check it with your stakeholders. And this is something that gets overlooked. You need to make sure your stakeholders are on board. Do they share that ambition? And if they do, are they willing to support it? If they don't, you might need to adjust that strategy. You're going to need them on board because you're probably going to need budget and resource. But you're also going to need internal change to make your social customer service work. Unless you're going to stick with the processes you've got that probably won't work on social, you're going to need to design new processes, new workflows, get other teams involved, those communication networks that we just talked about. So you're going to need people on side to help you deliver this. So you really don't skip that bit. That's absolutely key. Once you've worked out why you're doing it and what you want to achieve and you've got everyone on board, you can start to design the customer journeys, I think. So you need to work out how a query is going to be responded to on social. What sort of queries do you think they're going to be? How are you going to provide the most efficient and effective response for customers? How are you going to triage things so they go to the right people and get handled in the most effective way? When you've done that, you've got a base then, I think, to start working out what the structure of that service looks like. So you're going to need to consider things like, where are you going to get your social customer service agents from? Are they going to be from the call centre? Are you going to use people from the live chat team, perhaps, because they've got better written skills? You might want to outsource it. Or, there's all sorts of opportunities. You might want to create a new team from scratch, cherry pick them with particular skills.
Yeah.
How many are you going to need? And what hours are they going to operate? Are you going to ring fence them? So, if you're starting off a social customer service team, you might have very low volumes to start with. So if you've got a ring fence team, what are they going to do in that downtime? How are you going to enable them to flex? So they're all the sorts of things you're going to look at. And they're usually quite difficult questions for brands to answer, but I would say that when you're designing that structure, the key is to think about what structure is the right one for the customer, not for your internal existing structures and silos. Break them down, rebuild them for the customer. I think is really key there. Right. So, you've worked out you've got buy-in, you've got customer journeys, you've worked out what the structure looks like. When you've got that and you know what your workflow looks like, you're going to need tools to help you support that. And there are loads and loads of tools on the market, and there's some really good ones. Look at as many as you can, work out which the best ones are to sort of support your workflow, and consider things like customer service. It's quite useful quite often to get one that's sort of got a service team in the same country that you're in, because if you've got an issue, you can get them in working hours. And think about how they tie up with your other tools, your CRM system, for example. Do you have auditing requirements? If you do, will they be able to handle that? All of those sorts of things. You're also going to need to identify and select your social customer service agents. So you're going to need to think about the skills that they're going to need. You're going to need to work out how you're going to be able to test for those skills. Mm-hmm. So like I said, quite often it's a very different skill set. You're going to need someone that can sort of, show empathy, have a very human tone of voice, have good judgment. How do you test an agent's judgment? You're going to need to create a bespoke set of sort of tests to make sure that they're up to speed.
Yeah.
And you're also going to need to train them. They're going to need to know about social media, and it's not just the digital stuff as well. It's about how to craft the right sort of response for customers. So there's a whole training area, sort of get them ready for live responses. And and you might even want to consider, and I've done this with clients as well, is having almost like a sign-off procedure. So before they go live, to actually, to almost run a test past them to make sure they are fit for live service.
Well, sorry, what do you mean by with this sign-off procedure?
So actually, before they actually start responding to customers live on Twitter, to actually sort of almost like test their capabilities. So what we do quite often is run a set of scenarios. So we pick sort of, some tricky scenarios that we think that they might come across and see how well they respond and handle them. And then when we know that they're actually, that's how we can sort of say that they're displaying good judgment, ownership, empathy, and so on. We can say, okay, they're actually ready now to meet the public. So really recommend that, actually. Scenario training is a really useful way, sort of almost getting that internal reassurance that the team are up to scratch. I think also you're going to need to, next step, probably work out how you're going to monitor and measure your activity. So what are the metrics that you're going to need in the KPIs? How do they tie to your business objectives and your social customer service objectives? And if you're going to be tracking KPIs, well, how often are you going to review them, and what processes have you got then to adjust and improve your service if you're not meeting those KPIs? And also, what other parts of the business need information that you're getting from your social customer service? Do your innovation team need to be getting the customer insights that you're getting? Do your management team need to be able to sort of get a dashboard that shows what the current state of social servicing is? It's good to consider all of these things and sort of bring as much of the business along on your journey as possible, I think, just to get that customer view into your organisation. And I think my final step, I told you there were quite a few in each one. I think once, and I think this one's really important. I think this is one that the most common one that brands miss, probably naturally. But once you're up and running, go back to your strategy and work out what is next for your social customer service. You had a vision originally, if you followed all my steps. What was that vision? How are you now going to extend the service to actually sort of meet that vision? So maybe you want to consider, well, we're up and running now, let's go into proactive servicing. Or maybe now we can create a single customer view. Or, we've done customer servicing, let's surprise and delight our customers and run an engagement campaign. Or maybe you want to build an advocate program or create a really fluid omnichannel experience. Whatever your original vision was, don't lose it. If I could pass anything on to your listeners, I'd say treat social customer service as the first step to transforming your wider digital customer experience. That's the real opportunity I think that businesses have.
Your last question is, I think I will highlight it in the article that I will be posting tomorrow on LinkedIn, including this podcast. I listened carefully to all your answers, but this one in particular was really, really interesting, full of not only full of steps, but also of implications and explanations of processes and what brands and why brands should always have a strategy, not only in the pre-kickoff phase, but especially after they're starting handling online with customers. Thank you very much especially for this answer, Danielle.
No problem.
A question about UK business. What's the state of the art of social customer service in UK? Which industries are ahead of the pack?
I think the state of social customer service in the UK, I think it's increasingly common that large organisations have some sort of social customer servicing presence. I think for a lot of them, it's grown up in a very ad hoc way. and I think it's starting to be taken more seriously. But obviously, as a social customer service consultant, I'd like brands to take it.
That's good news for you.
Yeah. And I was trying to think about specific industries, and we talked earlier about banking, you and I think banking have done some really quite interesting things in social customer service because they have been traditionally very challenged reputationally, and they've lost a lot of trust. So, but also that they've got particular requirements around compliance in banking. So it's been quite a big ask almost for banks to become social. But I think a lot of them have done it quite well.
Right.
But in terms of, I was trying to think about brands that have done it well, and I think they cut across all industries. So I wanted to mention one of my clients, if that's okay, and one of your clients as well, Direct Line.
Yes.
I think they're really interesting. They just won an award for the most empathic brand on Twitter from Harvard Business Review.
I read about that, yeah.
Yeah, really cool. And I think it's worth, if you're a brand considering social customer service, it's worth looking at them because I think that they show you how tone of voice on social can be done really well. So I think that's worth a look. Not a UK company, but one you'll be familiar, KLM, Dutch Airlines.
Oh, yes.
They've always been ahead of the pack on this.
Yes.
And I think why they're interesting is that they use social servicing to innovate some really interesting customer experiences. And they do that surprise and delight thing really well. Some of the stuff they do, I think, is almost a bit campaigny rather than sort of pure social customer service, but still really interesting to look at because they show what you can achieve with really good engagement. O2 Telecoms,
yes.
They're really good. What's interesting about them is that they've got a really great online personality, and they've really empowered their agents to deliver a good brand experience. And it just goes to show it can be done with social customer service. I think people think it can be quite dry, but actually you can do something quite fun and interesting with it. Thought about train company. First Great Western is a UK rail company. They've used social media servicing really well for proactive stuff. So, it's really important if you're a train company that if something goes wrong, if you've got disruption, for example, that you keep customers well informed. And your window of opportunity for that, you're talking minutes, sometimes even seconds. It's not hours. So when we had in the UK, well, I think you probably had it as well, really big storms last year.
Yes.
And I know First Great Western worked really hard during that period to use social media to manage that situation and manage all of that disruption, which was absolutely huge. I mean, one of the railway lines that they operate in the southwest of England fell into the sea. Oh. So, the whole of that part of the country was cut off for weeks. Wow. So to actually manage a situation like that and keep customers up to date with the right information, it's a really valuable service, but actually seeing it in practice was quite a lovely thing to see. They really handled it well. I've got two more. Have we got time for two more?
Yes, we have.
So the other one that occurred to me was there's a DIY chain, B&Q. What I like about the way they do social customer service is that they take it really seriously. They've got good long sort of operating times on social, and they have a really fast service level agreement on social as well. Okay. But the thing I like about it is they tie up the on and offline worlds. So if you tweet in store, they'll help you. They'll send someone out in store to help you, and I really like that meshing of on and offline. That's quite neat. And then the last one I was going to mention just was the supermarket, Tesco. Not that their social customer service is amazing particularly, but just for the sheer size of their operation. Think how many stores they've got. And actually they do social customer service really rather well at scale. So I think just for that example of seeing how it can operate well at scale, I'd like to include them in there as well.
Great. You gave so many examples of UK brands that already adopted social customer service. Just an information about the Italian, state of the art. We have a delay compared to UK or United States in terms of social customer service awareness, first of all. But in the last 12, 16 months, companies are realizing the need to handle the rising number of customer queries that they receive via Twitter or Facebook, even though they did not set any kind of social customer service yet. And that's why some telcos already started to have a social customer service strategy implemented a couple of years ago, and now a few weeks. In fact, I was talking to you about the Italian Social Banking Forum, which will be held 1st of October here in Milan, and I will be honored to be one of the speakers. And in that event, for the first time this year, the main focus will be on social CRM. So that's the confirmation that also in Italy, big brands, especially big brands, are realizing that they need to be not only present with social media as marketing tools, but rather as new channels to better help them deliver an excellent customer experience. So I'm pretty confident to be busy. I'm really busy at the moment, but
they've got the opportunity to do it right from the start, you know.
Yeah.
Which it perhaps in the UK hasn't been the case because it's such a nascent, you know, a new thing that was out there. But I think you know, now there's enough case studies that you can actually sit back and say, no, this is what good looks like, and you can get it right from the off. So yeah, I think that's quite nice for us, isn't it?
That's great. So before saying bye-bye, where can we find you online? Did you like this question?
yeah, that's a good one. Well, we've got a blog on our website, which is www.brightcultures.com. And then I write about things like my crisis model and, you know, the steps to social customer service and all that sort of thing. And also we regularly do a roundup of interesting social customer service news, which Kaz writes. So, yeah, have a look at that and sign up to that. I'm also on Twitter. My handle is @Danielle Sheerin, and of course I'm on LinkedIn. So yeah, any listeners that want to connect with me on LinkedIn, feel free to do so.
That's fine. Of course, I will add all your social details within the article, and I thank you very much, Danielle, for being my guest today. I think that this podcast episode in particular will help many listeners to understand the importance of social customer service and the implications that brands need to face designing and setting up strategies. So thank you very much for being here, Danielle. This is a pleasure.
Thank you, Paolo.
All right. So thanks to your listeners, and till the next episode. I remember that you can find all my podcast on Spreaker.com, and this article in particular on my LinkedIn profile. Bye-bye.